now we're ready to do the decreases toward the end of the pattern, where we'll be making the rows shorter for the to finish up the Celtic knot pattern, and then to make it smaller at the palm side of the glove. So I have knit through row 51. I'm ready to start on row 52, where the decreases start. Notice I have my marker that I tied on at the ends of row, I believe it was 48, for the first edge of the where the thumb hole is going to go in the seam. I may need to adjust that later as we see how things turn out, but it's kind of useful to put those markers in so you have a place to start from to get your thumb hole. So I'm going to begin this row and knit over to the place where the decreases will happen, which is in between my two green stitch markers. So I'll get that far. This part is actually easier than the increases we did at the beginning of the pattern. You don't have to be going back and pulling a loop from the row before or anything. It's just a matter of knitting two together without adding a yarn over. So that's pretty easy, but you do need to move all the stitches from the to the end of the row over. So I'll show you that part. Okay, so here we are at my green stitch markers. And what I'm going to do is basically get rid of these two stitches in between the green stitch markers. So I'm going to have a two together on that green stitch marker and a two together on the other one, but we need to move everything over and fill in these two holes, or these two empty pegs now. So I'm going to move, when we were expanding the row, we moved out toward the, out past the end of the row. Now we're going to move the end of the row back in again. So I move this over. In this next row, there are no stitches between the two green stitch markers, so I've moved those over. And then all the rest of the stitches to the end of the row are just going to move in, along with their stitch markers. Oops. Every once in a while, when you're moving stitches around like this, sometimes you get a little bit of frayed yarn, and you have to be careful to get the loop completely onto the peg. All right, so then I will just do, these two are knit togethers. And then I would move on and do the rest of the row over to the next place where I have the decreases. So I will do that off camera and come back. Okay, I've knit around the rest of the way to my next set of green stitch markers, and I'm just going to do the same thing again. So I'm doing a two together on the green stitch markers, and that will leave two empty pegs in between. So what I need to do is move all the rest of the stitches in the row over again to fill in those two empty pegs, making my rows shorter again. As always, when you're working on a kiss loom, you have to be careful about getting your stitches all the way behind the pins and then back in between the correct two pins to get on the right peg. Again, here's my marker from to show where my thumb hole should go when I do my seam. All right, so I finish those up. I will knit these two that are the two together stitches. There we go. A little bit later in the pattern there are purl two togethers, and those are fairly easy too. So when we get to the point where we're doing all purls and to sort of end the pattern, and we want to make the rows narrower so that you have a glove that's a little tighter around the palm than it is around the arm. Whoops, that should have been a knit stitch. Now, as I finish this row, we haven't taken any of the markers out yet. In the next row, we'll actually eliminate the stitches where the green markers are. And it's probably a good idea to find some way to mark where those were. I will, on my Kiss loom, I'll do, at the beginning I had the green stitch markers back here on the pin, in between the two pegs. And so that's what I'll do. And I'll be able to see where that spot is on the chart. It's easier to keep track of where you are on the chart if you know where those green stitch markers were. You could use a piece of tape along here, or you know, some other way of marking that if you'd like to, just so that you know where those stitches were. Just makes it easier to keep track of the pattern. So I think you can do the rest of the decreases and finish the knitting on your own. The next video I'll do will be on how to sew the seam and finish the glove.